Okay, if I could have my panellists now, please. We're going to talk about ways to make data work harder in 2025 and also beyond. It says 3 ways on the agenda, but we'll cover as many as we like. So, okay. And what I'm going to do is get our panellists to introduce themselves in turn, and then we've got an opening question. Just sit wherever you like. Doesn't matter which order we're in. And we have a nice sort of cross-section of the ecosystem represented here. So, okay, right, welcome everyone. So, if we could just go in turn, so literally we'll start with you, Francis, and then work down. Just introduce yourself, tell us about your role, and also our opening question is there any kind of like really low-hanging fruit in terms of making data work harder, that we can get an easy win, doesn't require a lot of pain and effort and just, and sort of internal pain?
Yeah. Yes, hi everyone, I'm Francis. I'm Director of Strategic Solutions at Ozone, so essentially looking after the team that thinks about how we can make better use of the data that we have and kind of glean the right insights from that to make campaigns work harder. In answer to your question, I'm going to start with something really exciting, consent. So I think for us, it's always been kind of really important thinking about the compliance and the consent of the data. But I think certainly more so now, we've kind of recently been verified by PwC, so it's become really important to us to kind of talk about that and get brands to be thinking about not just the activation of their data and the kind of contracts they have in place with their data partners, but also more broadly the media partners that you're working with, making sure you're having those conversations. And the more that we kind of think about consent and compliance of the data, the more we can start thinking about our audience as humans rather than just data points. And I think that is kind of the first step towards really driving kind of more significant brand growth and outcomes. Just thinking of that shift from just pure data to who are these humans that I'm trying to speak to? And that really is, that check of contracts is relatively quick, but pretty significant.
Lovely, all right, that's a great starter. So, Felicity.
Am I on? Does it work? Yes, it does. Hi, everybody. So, my name is Felicity Starr. I work at Salesforce. I run the media and sports team. So, thanks for having me today. I've got what I think are 3 quick wins. One is to activate your first-party data. So most companies have the data, they just need to unify it with your emails, your loyalty, and your CRM. Second one is to really drive the personalization. So I'm not talking about agentic AI, I'm talking about very basic, low-lift, predictive models that then help you to then boost that activation. If I sit this way, it might not do that. And then the third one is all about connecting your marketing with your CRM. So it's super, super important to make sure that your campaigns are delivering the boost in the activation that you're seeing. So those are the 3 low-hanging fruit that I can help you with.
Good stuff. Okay, we'll talk about some of that later, no doubt. Stellina?
Hi, I'm Stellina Argyropoulou. I work at John Lewis. I'm the media performance and media planning lead over at John Lewis. With regards to the 2 things the 2 lowest hanging fruits, I think 2 things come to my mind. One is around audiences, and it's around how we build segmentation using the data. So we broadly use, everywhere I've worked at all of my clients in the past, and we do the same at John Lewis. We see very broad segmentation, adults, ABC1, 45 plus, and so on. And so it's the who that we focus on, but we miss the why they shop with us or why they don't choose us, the what they shop, the when they shop, all of this data that can inform how we reach them, when we reach them, also the message, I think the creative platform as well of how we reach them. The other thing is AI in the automation of data, the data sorting. Again, speaking from our own experience over at John Lewis, we have big teams sorting data. A lot of time is being spent in trying to kind of get all of this data into dashboards that make it easy for us to draw inside. I think all of this process could be made a lot faster with AI, so we can go into kind of much faster insight and much faster decision making as well.
Okay, thank you. And Tashan?
Awesome. Hi, I'm Tashan Nicholas. I'm a director at Magic Numbers. A lot of the work that we do is founded by Dr. Grace Kite. We do a lot of econometrics, but we're just a people-friendly analytics company. And I guess the point of view that I'm coming from, and I don't want to get too philosophical about data, but it's to start by asking great questions. Not all data is created equal, and so actually it's really important for us to understand what decisions can be made with what data and what can't. And so I think that's the lowest hanging fruit, is to get people in the room and actually to interrogate the data. I think it was Professor John Tuckey that was talking about, he's a statistician, sorry I'm such a geek, but he was talking about it's better to have an approximate answer to a good question than it is to have a fantastic answer to a bad question that can be made precise. And so I think the lowest hanging fruit is maybe look at the data, interrogate it, ask questions, and a great place to start is just the 4 Ps, like just go through them and interrogate marketing data with that perspective. So yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, that's a great start. And Francis, I mean, at Ozone, you are sort of looking at moving more from sort of general personas and demos to consumption as signals for sort of targeting and informing marketing. I mean, just tell us about that.
Yeah, so I think to be honest, for those who don't know of Ozone, we are that kind of single deduplicated view of our kind of biggest and best loved publishers in the UK and now more broadly across the world. So we have that single view and we have that first party publisher data at scale. So what from inception, we've kind of been encouraging brands to try and move away from broad brushstroke age and gender targeting and the more kind of outdated socio-demo targeting, and think more about what your audience are really interested in, what are they leaning into, what do they care about, just as importantly, what don't they care about. And that really will help, as I said before, kind of start thinking about your audience more in terms of as humans and really how you as a brand can fit into their overall everyday lives. I think when you work for a brand, you think and you experience that, you think about that brand and you experience that brand every single day, but the reality is that brand is just, of a category, it's just one part of their overall experience. And so for us, for targeting, that's kind of always been what we have kind of been encouraging brands to do. Now more so what we're trying to do is get brands to think a little bit more about the role of kind of behavior in terms of insight and understanding more about the audience. To the point that Stellina was making, how are they engaging with the brand, but how are they just sort of, what are they interested in more broadly than that? I mean, pixels are an interesting thing to me because they've sort of fallen a bit out of fashion for measurement, which is kind of, understandable, it has its weaknesses, but what we've kind of done by sort of getting rid of pixels is we've also lost the power of what they have in terms of being able to understand more about the audience. How can we understand what your audience specifically are interested in, or what they do or don't care about, or how do socioeconomic factors impact them, all through what they're reading and what they're engaging with across publishers. And then that will allow you to start to differentiate your brand from all the other competitors within your category, because you'll know specifically what your audiences do or don't care about and how that differs to everyone else in market. And you can kind of start to then be a bit more intelligent with, of course, there's always a role for contextual targeting and being in the right categories, but where can we find your audience in other categories that we know are meaningful to your audience specifically? So yeah, that's sort of the kind of the route we're trying to go down and trying to encourage brands to work that way.
So if I tell you a particular type of person that I want to target, they buy a certain kind of goods, you can tell me what they're consuming, that kind of profile of person, what they consume, and therefore where I can find them?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, we can kind of tell you, and we can do that on a seasonal basis as well. So obviously what that individual cares about right now will be very different to what they care about in July, August, September. And we can start to have that full year view of where you should be showing up as a brand, how you should be targeting your audience, as the seasons shift, as economic factors change, when the budget kicks in, all of these factors that influence the kind of everyday experience of your audience, and therefore how your brand fits into that.
Okay, and Stellina, you're tracking what people do and the sort of what they look at on your own website and using that for your CRM kind of messaging, aren't you? So tell us about that, because that's not so much for media targeting, but it's more your sort of your own CRM kind
of. Correct. So we're a department store. We sell thousands of things. You can imagine how much data we handle, and that allows us. We've got business science teams that work with data to create models like propensity and predictive models to tell us, they score our customers based on what they have shopped recently, what they've been shopping, the life stage, to predict then the brands that are more likely to shop in the future. And then we take this knowledge and implement it within a CRM. So me and Felicity will not get the same fashion email on the fashion CRM day because she's more likely to wear a dress, more likely to wear a pair of jeans. And this is a really, really powerful way for us to use our data for many reasons. First of all, from a performance perspective, since implementing this strategy, we've seen really great uplifts in terms of engagement with our email, which, by the way, was really it was on a sliding slope. It wasn't doing really well. So we've seen engagement rates increase by a third. We've seen revenue increase by a quarter. But what is really more important, I think, is that we are showing our audiences and our customers new brands that perhaps they wouldn't have thought of in the past, and we are broadening the kind of the range of the shopping. And this is really powerful for us because as a brand, we want to be seeing, especially within fashion, as a modern brand, we want to be able to stock all the newest brands, and it's only through selling the smaller ones and selling a wide range that brands trust us to stock the brands with us, the product with us. Therefore, it's a circle that one thing helps the other. So yeah, for us, these predictive models were really, really powerful from CRM perspective, business revenue in the short term, but also how we work with the brands and how we sell John Lewis to brands.
You said sales are up a quarter, and that's directly attributable to
That's through
personalised CRM.
Yeah.
Wow, it's a big impact.
It is, yeah.
Okay. All right, Felicity, tell us about, where you think we're going with data. I mean, in terms of, are we moving from broad demos and personas into consumption? How do we do that? How do you help us do that?
Yeah, we're seeing a massive shift actually from the traditional demographic personas to the behavioural insights and behavioural signals, really. So we do a lot with John Lewis, but also with Netflix and Paramount in terms of with NLP, and we can actually infer behaviour and intent from how customers are actually engaging with their platforms. So what's their click path? How long is their session? When do they pause, stop a program? Do they binge watch a series? And all of these things are really important to then add back into the personalisation on a sort of self-optimising journey. So depending on when a customer or a person is doing certain things is then when you can then target an ad, for example, from John Lewis, because you know what their mood will be and you know then how they will react to your advertisement. So yeah, we're seeing a massive shift from traditional personas to behavioural insights.
So in those media providers like Netflix or people like that, it's the journey that the viewer is taking and how they move around inside it, and you're using that to decide when they should be served ads or what they would actually like to see.
Yeah, and it's all increasing their first-party data, which is so important, especially now with cookies leaving us.
Okay, and I know obviously one of the sort of the big mantras for Salesforce is, insights, not just data. Mm-hmm. I mean, just talk us through how quickly we move from having lots of data to having lots of rich insights.
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge difference, right, from being data rich to actually, you've got tons and volumes of data, and then actually being insight rich, where you effectively know what to do with the data. And I think it was your first on your introductory question. The most important thing here, don't quote me because obviously the technology, but actually it's the questions. So, to drive a good campaign with insights that are fully grounded in what your purpose is, you have to ask the right questions. So, for example, going to Netflix, maybe they're looking at increasing the streaming. How many customers do you want to increase over a 7-day period? What is the content and the messaging that you need to deliver that? That question is far superior to a broad-based question of lots of customers do is I got to sort my data out first. When really you've got to understand what your strategy is, where you're going, and then understand from that the segment of data that you'll need.
Okay, all right. And I mean, one of the broader sort of industry trends is to sort of look beyond proxies to outcomes. Everyone's very focused on outcomes. And Tashan, you're in the MMM game.
Yeah.
So this is very much your thing. So just sort of, what is the best practice if you want to, show business outcomes as a result of media investment or marketing investment? Just talk us through how you help people to do that.
Yeah, so I guess it starts with thinking around that question piece, that discovery. I know we're talking a lot about data, but actually people are so central for us to be able to understand what is the best toolkit. I'll talk a bit around MMM, but actually if you have different questions, that might not be the piece of analytics that you might use. And so discovery starts by getting people in the room that need to make decisions, getting everyone together and understanding what do we need to answer with this piece of analysis. And to your question, if that question is, oh, what is marketing doing to sales? What is media investment doing to sales? Then market mix modeling is a great approach. Now, I know everyone talks about this very often, but just for completeness, I'll give a brief definition. Sorry if everyone knows this already. But market mix modeling is a common term that is all around how does media drive sales. But it commonly uses what I do, which is a toolkit we use econometrics, which is just a statistical toolkit. And they've become synonymous in the UK, but they are slightly different things. Econometrics is the toolkit. Now, a lot of what we've spoken about is kind of trying to understand those behavioural insights. But what we're doing when we're building an MMM model is to say, actually, we understand that we've targeted these consumers, we've done this activity that is super rich with data and insight. But what happened? Did we have an uplift in web visits? Did we have an uplift in sales? And the reason that's important is because a lot of our measurement techniques look at online touch points. And so when we look at attributed sales, we're looking at a version of the world that ignores all the other different offline touch points that have happened just before. So what MMM or econometrics is doing is stripping all of that away and understanding what is the actual incremental touch point that has actually driven that. And that's super important because then that helps us be able to make decisions off the back of data. And so that's why I think MMM is really important, is because actually, depending on where you sit in the organization, it can be a decision of, well, how much should we spend in general to grow our business and to reach our targets, or even at a tactic level, which channels should I spend on, but with the knowledge of taking all that into account. And I guess the third thing, which is why it's really important, is that actually there's lots of other things happening at the same time, such as price changes, the economy, weather, depending on your category, regulation changes. And so econometrics is there to bring that all together and also give a marketer the ability to have that conversation internally, especially with finance. So I feel like I just went on there for over and over, so stop me.
I mean, the main concern most people have with it is the time it takes to get your insights. Yeah. And, you know, do you need years of historic data before you can be useful to someone?
Yeah, so typically what you want is 3 years of weekly data. And the reason that you want that is because you need enough examples of the data so it can tell the difference between Christmas and the campaign that happened during Christmas. So that's what you need, and it needs enough data points for it to be statistically viable. In terms of the time it takes, I think it's worth pointing to as well. Now we are in this place where we can match kind of that human-centric modelers with lots of experience building data, but also technology that allows you to get quicker insights as well, and they both work well together. So whilst the initial project can take some setup, actually, once you've set it up once, and if you set it up in the right way, you can increase speed to outcomes and insight.
Okay, how much accuracy can we have? I mean, how much trust can we put in MMM? If you give us the figure, this is what we expect to have based on all the historical knowledge we have.
Yeah.
You know, if you spend X amount more on television next month, can you give us a sort of a very accurate ROI on it?
Absolutely. I mean, it'd be crazy if I said no, right? But no, that's the point of it. And also, when we're doing this, that's why people's such an important element of it. We're not going in a black box and saying this is the answer. We're looking at our results, and then we're calibrating them with other bits of data as well. So we did this project where we were able to look for an FMCG client, a global FMCG client, and so we were able to report on the ROI of 3 distinct periods of time and 3 different campaigns. But also we had their star rating as well, and so actually we were able to combine that with additional information plus interviews and some brand tracking. So really to understand, does this result make sense? We know the statistics make sense, does it make sense internally? So it's combining both of those worlds together. So yes, in one word.
Okay, great. And Stellina, I know you're a fan of MMM and you're using it at John Lewis to great effect. So just sort of tell us about that and the accuracy you get out of it, the trust that you can put in it when you justify investments internally.
Yeah, I mean, I am a fan of MMM. I'm not a fan of only MMM. I have to clarify that there's other tools that we need to use to look at long-term effectiveness of everything that we do. But when it comes to MMM in particular, I think what I've seen in my nearly 20 years experience working at media agencies and now John Lewis and using MMM, different MMM providers, is the journey of MMM from just telling us what the media choices should be to actually now being business partners that inform business decisions such as the seasonality, how the phasing of a spend. In John Lewis, we also look at, we've got 4 broad categories like fashion, beauty, tech and home, for example. We use MMM to tell us where we should be investing for margin, where we should be investing for revenue and so on. So this is much more complex now, and it's much more useful when it comes to informing business decisions. And with John Lewis having this granularity of data and the wealth of data as well and information and from MMM means that we can go to the commercial teams and say the plan is not going to deliver because home works better here and not there. So we can inform these decisions, like these big business decisions. We can go to finance and say the shape of the spend needs to change because MMM tells us that we need to shift spend, for example, from H1 into the H2. And the reason we can do that is because going back 4 years of data, we have modeled every single month and we looked at what MMM predicted at that point and what the actual was. And we have seen a very consistent discrepancy between 3 to 5% in most months. There will be some months which will be more odd, but generally speaking, they've been the forecast and the actual have always been very, very consistent. And this gives us the confidence to go to the finance, all of the other teams and say, this is when you're going to deliver. So it's been a really, really useful tool for us as a partner in business decisions. And we are seeing the incrementality coming from the shifts that we're making, not just in media, which is obviously the basic thing, but the plan, the customer plan, and also the phasing of the spend.
Okay. Very quickly, do you think that marketing has gained more respect in the boardroom because of the work with data?
Oh, absolutely. Within, I mean, I don't know broadly now what happens elsewhere, but within our business, absolutely, yes.
Okay. And Francis, in terms of moving towards outcomes, what can you do in that department?
Yeah, I think for us it's difficult really because obviously as a media owner, I think it's quite easy for brands to kind of keep us a bit more arm's length when it comes to the actual measurement and sort of discussion of the outcomes. But where we definitely see the greatest success in terms of outcomes is with those brands that are a bit more collaborative and to Tashan's point, allow us to sit at the table and have that conversation. You know, we've had examples of brands that we have kind of worked with throughout the process of planning to understand which products are most important to them, how this relates to the audiences and how this relates to the creative that should be being served. By being involved in every single element closely with the client, we were able to deliver 6.5x ROI as a result of that collaboration. Similarly, being able to work with a brand, in this case it was a home brand, they allowed us to kind of work closely with them in terms of measurement, pixeling the site, being involved in that collaboration, and through, as I talked to you before, that increased insight and understanding the behaviors of those audiences, we drove that was a 2x ROAS for that particular brand. And similarly, just the last one, I think when we worked with a kind of big nationwide grocer, they had huge reliance on print activity where they were seeing declining readerships. We worked with them super closely to try and mirror their print plans across our publisher premium environments. And that delivered, I think it was about 14 million incremental audience. So we're always seeing the most significant growth and gains is from those brands who, I know it's difficult and it takes time, but that's why I think working with fewer, bigger, better partners and having that relationship where you're all sitting around the table and being involved throughout the process, you will see better results.
Okay, and Felicity, you said at the start, activate that data. That was one of your kind of low-hanging fruit. And how much of that requires collaboration? And, what are the key collaborations we have to think about? How can you help with those?
Yeah, it's more and more important collaboration, especially with, the focus on first-party media, first-party data. The companies that we work with that do it really well, people like Formula One, Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola are actually fantastic, and they're on an agentic journey themselves now, but they as you can imagine, they have to partner with a tremendous amount of companies. They have to partner with, you know, the retailers, their media companies, other FMCG companies as well. And it's really important that they collaborate but don't share any of the sort of expose that raw customer data. So it's not just about matching audiences, it's about how to get to the insights faster without exposing any secure information. So that's done on the platform. It's really, really super important, as we all know. And then Formula One are pretty cool as well because they do it all real time. So, you know, it's not post-season when they're getting this feedback loop. It's constant. It's whilst you're engaging with an online activity or looking at the merchandise or you're at an experience. They're sharing this data across parties to actually then increase the personalisation to drive the results. So yeah, it's super important that the security of it is super important, and then collaborating, you know, it's the old adage with the teaming, you always get better results.
Okay. And is it all, you know, are we on top of it in terms of the tech and the process? Are there any obvious barriers, or are we just, let's just do it, it's a matter of time now?
I'm the wrong person to ask. I mean, I'm a definitely just do it. You know, if you want to do something, what is holding you back?
But I mean, in terms of the tech, the cost, the time that everybody has to put
the tech
into
is
it
here.
It all fairly justifiable?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I read something yesterday which was a bit Black Mirror-y, but I loved it. And it basically said that in 5 years' time, you know, 2030, that is, yes, 20% of all customers worldwide, doesn't matter where we are going to be machines. So how do your machines sell to those machines? So something to, yeah, the technology is absolutely here. Budget and ROI is what you have to overcome.
Okay, so last word to you, Tashan. I mean, do you think that marketers have more respect in the boardroom today than they did 3-5 years ago?
I won't say comparatively because I don't know. But what I will say is from a lot of the work that we do in terms of working in MMM, a lot of the people that we're speaking to are CFOs and CMOs. And Grace, our founder, she did a project where she spoke with lots of CFOs to kind of get their opinion on like, well, when does marketing work and what do you think about marketing? And actually, I think when we think of them, we think of these scary people that have these budgets that are like, no, you won't get any more money. But actually, they are willing to work really collaboratively. It's just that we need to speak the language of this CFO, and that's what MMM, so the points that you were raising, talk about margin, being able to talk about what's on the P&L. I think what we're seeing, because MMM has become more popular, is just perhaps the ability to communicate more effectively with an audience. Kind of like very marketing, right? Communicate more effectively with an audience. So yeah, perhaps more that.
Okay, unfortunately we're out of time, so I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you very much to our panellists.